Olá, eu sou Katiuscia Sotomayor e este é o Agro América, programa em parceria com o Instituto Interamericano de Cooperação para a Agricultura, o IICA, aqui no AgroMais, seu canal voltado para o agronegócio 24 horas. A proposta é mostrar iniciativas inovadoras e compartilhar boas práticas dos 34 Estados-membros que podem ser replicadas em todo o mundo na busca pelo desenvolvimento agrícola e pelo bem-estar rural. Hoje o assunto são iniciativas inovadoras para a conscientização sobre a importância do setor agrícola e os seus vínculos com a segurança alimentar e a proteção do meio ambiente nos Estados Unidos. E quem conversa com a gente é o produtor americano Phillip Councell, que receberá o prêmio A Alma da Ruralidade do IICA, por reunir esforços por associar educação e agro. Welcome, Chip. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
First of all, let's talk about your family history. Farming is part of your identity, right? 10 generations of the family have been farmers in the United States.
Yes, that is correct. So it's quite an interesting story. In 1690, two brothers left England. One of them did not survive the trip, but one did. Dennis Councell settled in this area, and we've been farming in the area ever since. I'm the 10th generation to farm. My son farms with us in the operation, and he's the 11th generation. So we're a typically family farm.
So what do you produce? Talk a little bit about your farm.
Sure. So we grow just under 2,000 acres, which would be roughly 800 hectares. And we grow corn, soybeans, wheat, and fresh market vegetables. So along with our grain farming operation, we have a agritourism operation that includes a pick your own pumpkin patch, ag entertainment type things, and we also do school tours on the farm to educate consumers and school children about what we do, why we do it, and how we do it.
So we're going to talk a little bit about those projects, but aware of the role played by farmers in feeding a growing global population, you started working towards a sustainable production, right? How do you do that?
Well, I think as farmers, we all have a responsibility to the environment. We have a responsibility to feed the world, but we also need to take care of the soil and our environment around us. So we have been no-till farming since the 1970s. My father was one of the first in the area to try no-till farming, and so we've done that. And I think I added up one time, and we're implementing about 27 different conservation practices on our farm, and these range from variable rate fertilizer application, uh, integrated pest management, where we actually scout the fields before we apply a pesticide to see exactly, if we have a problem. We only spray the insecticides when we absolutely have to. We use a lot of the technology, the GM seeds and those type things. A lot of grass waterways and buffer strips where we need them. So we're doing everything we can. We farm in the eastern United States. We're about 60 miles due east of Washington D.C. So we farm between the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. So I think the Chesapeake Bay is probably one of the most sensitive environmental areas, probably in the country, in the U.S. So we, I think we need to do our part to protect it for future generations.
You mentioned 27 actions. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. So, in some of the fields where they have a little bit of hills or rolls, we'll put some grass waterways in to channel the water to prevent soil erosion. Uh, we'll use some buffer strips around some steep slopes. We may use some rock outfalls where the water enters into stream or waterway for a buffer to slow the water up a little bit. We use no-till farming to conserve moisture, and we've seen a lot of efficiencies out of the no-till farming. We believe in the technology of the seed and what that can do for us. We talked about the integrated pest management, where instead of just making a blanket application. We scout the fields once to twice a week, depending on the crop, to see exactly what we do need. Uh, we have a variable rate on our sprayer, on our fertilizer application. We use a lot of the um, GPS technology on our equipment for efficiencies there. So it's all those type of things that collectively I think make a difference.
And do you think that maybe countries, other countries here in the Americas, can we use and repeat your example?
Oh yeah, and I think farmers do. I've been fortunate enough to travel around the world, and I think farmers are the same worldwide. So we start the year out with the best technology that is available to us and the hopes of a good growing season and good crops. So, my opinion from what I've seen, farmers farm differently around the world, but it's basically, we all start out the same with the best technology that's available to us and doing the best job we can with what's available to us. So, and I think a lot of these things are actually size neutral. If you look at some of the GMO seeds and the biotechnology and those type things, and I would actually say that they probably benefit a smaller farmer more so than a larger farmer. So I think that's the really interesting thing, and something pretty credible is again is that a lot of this technology is size neutral.
And aside the technology, what do you think is necessary to ensure sustainable production practices and guarantee food security around the world? Because other countries depend on us, US and
Right.
Brazil, for example, I mean.
Right. So I think it's important that we are guided by the science and not politics. Sometimes politics get in the way of smart decisions, in my opinion. And the science, I think, speaks to itself on sustainability. I think farmers uh, willingly, at least in my area, if it makes sense and it's economically feasible to do it. We embrace new technology, sustainable practices, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And no two areas are exactly the same. What works on my farm in my area of the country may not work in the Midwestern United States or certain areas, but we can all learn from each other. There's bits and pieces of all of it that intermesh.
And why did you decide to adopt the direct planning system? You mentioned your father, probably is because of that, but what are the main results of this choice?
So it's pretty interesting. So we did it again. My father started in the 1970s. And he actually did it to conserve soil moisture. So the area that we farm in, we have relatively thin topsoils, about 8 inches, and we were tilling the land and planting a crop. And it would look great until the heat of the summer. And we say we can lose a crop here in 3 weeks. We have temperatures can get to 100 degrees and high humidity and those type things. So we started out we were seeing uh, moisture conservation, which uh, let the crop hold on a little bit longer by not tilling the soil. It would retain the moisture better. But then we also noticed other things again with the biotechnology and the advent of those crops. We started to see other benefits as far as beneficial insects and enhanced wildlife and those type things. We were getting healthier soils, better water infiltration. So the whole thing, there's a lot of things that happen that we really didn't expect or plan on, but it kind of worked out that way.
So you use previous crop residue and what disturbs the soil as little as possible, reducing erosion, contributing to improved water quality. And does it affect the productivity?
Well, actually, our yields have gone up since we've started the no-till farming. Uh, we were seeing a yield increase from that. Again, those efficiencies in water uptake and nutrient uptake. Again, the soil is healthier, more earthworms and biologicals and beneficial insects and those type things. So in our case, our yields actually did go up. But I understand in some areas because of soil types and moisture wet during planting season or wetter soils that, what works for us may not work in other areas.
But as you already said, one of the roles of the farmer is also the responsibility for protecting the environment, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our family has farmed these lands for over 300 years, and it's my intention to keep it that way for future generations should they decide to farm. And even if they don't, again, we make our living from the soil, and who better to protect it than us as farmers? We understand our farms, we understand our fields, we understand our soils, and I think we are the best stewards of that.
And what about the gap separating the urban and the rural populations? How can it be reduced? Let's talk a little bit about the projects that you have there or about the social media. What do you think can reduce this gap?
Well, I think it's consumer education. I still think farmers are the good guys. We still wear the white hat, so to speak, and I think people appreciate where their food comes. They want to understand it. Social media is both good and bad. It's an easy way to get information out, but unfortunately, there's also a lot of misinformation. So, in the U.S., National Corn Growers Association has worked really hard to educate consumers. I'm sure other countries are doing the same thing, but it's one step at a time, and hopefully you educate a consumer and they tell their friends and whatnot. And again, our ag tourism operation, we have a classroom component of that where we bring school children out to the farm. We'll bring about 3,000 school children out in the months of September and October. And we like to say that we're educating them, but we're really speaking to the parents as well, the chaperones on the trip, again, to explain why we do these things. And we talk about, uh, again, what we do, why we do it, what the benefits are, and then those type things.
And so, how can we tackle the challenges facing agriculture of the future? You mentioned the kids. Now we have to adapt to climate change and to feed a population that is demanding increasingly healthy foods, right? And we
Right.
have access to technology and innovation. You think that's the answer, or there's something else?
So I think that is the answer. I think innovation definitely. We're told there's going to be a lot more mouths to feed in the near future, and farmers have to continue to be productive. If we are going to be sustainable, to me, it makes sense to grow more on the acres that are already in production, bringing in a few acres as they need to, uh, but we're going to have to increase yields, and we're going to do that through innovation and the technology. And again, we got to make sure that the science carries the day. Good science, there might be some things as farmers that we aren't happy about, but the science is a science, and that's what needs to guide us, and not the political winds. We If we do that, then I think we're in trouble. If we let the political influence again carry the day instead of the actual science.
And today, you are the sitting president of Maisol, right? Can you talk a little bit about this association and the relation with Brazil, for example?
Right. Well, I'm happy to announce that my term as president of Maisol just ended, and we actually have a president from Brazil now, Paulo, and he'll do a great job. So Maisol is an international alliance of corn growers from the United States, Brazil, and Argentina. So obviously, we're fierce competitors in the marketplace, but we do have trade barriers overseas in our export markets, and this could be acceptance to some of the technology as it relates to biotechnology and maximum residue levels in some countries. Uh, and that's an issue of some herbicide restrictions on crops and those type things. So we work together where we have common trade barriers, but again, there's more strength working together. The three countries represent just over 50% of the corn grown worldwide. and over 70% of corn exports worldwide. So, and we work well together. You know, I've really enjoyed it. I've been involved with that since about 2015. Uh, great farmer leaders.
While you produce in very different countries and are competitors, as you mentioned, we can say you have a lot more in common, right? Not just the trade barriers, right? How does it work?
Well, again, you know, farmers are the same. We we're proud of what we do. We talk about what we do, and you know, when it comes down to it, we're all really family farmers. And the most important thing is, again, providing for our families, taking care of the land, and we may come from different areas and so forth and so on. But I think at heart, we are exactly the same.
Now, you mentioned the kids and the schools that you receive in your farm, but another really interesting thing is the fact that you have a facility in your farm that is dedicated to agritourism, right? Where visitors can partake in different activities to learn about how food is made. Or that is the same thing you do with school kids. Can you explain a little bit, please?
Sure, sure. So what we do is it's an ag tourism operation. It centers around the fall activities, the pumpkins. Halloween's a big thing here in our area in the United States. So we have families come out, and we have about 27 different activities that are all outdoor related. So one thing is that we have is a corn maze. So obviously, it's just a path cut through in this case, we use about a 3 acre block of corn, cut a path through it, and families try to find their way through to get to the other end. Uh, some other things we do, we have a small petting zoo that has some farm animals. We have a sandbox that is actually filled with corn grain, and the kids can play in it and see what corn looks like and feels like. And around each of these, we'll have a sign that explains what it is and those type things, and a little bit about the crop and some of the things we do. So yeah, and we'll have, if the weather's good on a Saturday or Sunday, we'll have about 1,500 people a day through there. So I think we're reaching quite a large audience.
And what do you think is the main achievements of this kind of visits?
Well, I think the main thing, obviously, it's part of our business plan. It's a model. We sell pumpkins. We sell snacks and those type things. So it does generate revenue for us. It's an important part of our operation. But again, it's educating the public about what we do. We want a lot of children in this area are removed from the farm. Maybe their grandparents or even further back were farmers at one point in time. And this is an opportunity for them to actually get on a farm, to get their feet dirty and walk around the fields and see things, see what corn looks like, see what soybeans look like, see how plants grow, what it takes to grow them. And it's been a good addition for us as an operation. And again, it's serving a dual purpose.
And because of this effort, you will receive the award, the IICA award, for these innovative initiatives that work to raise awareness about the importance of agriculture and how it relates to food security and to environmental protection, right? How do you feel about this recognition?
Well, I got a phone call probably the beginning of August, and quite honestly, I was quite shocked and quite honored. It was a real surprise and a true honor to be recognized internationally for what we do, and I also feel that there are numerous farmers that are just as deserving. So I don't think there's anything really special about what we do. We care about what we do. We love what we do, and I'm honored. But I accept this award on behalf of all the farmers that are working hard to provide food for a growing world.
So in addition to receiving the Soul of Rurality Award, the Leaders of Rurality recognized by the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, will be invited to participate in several of the agency's advisory bodies. How do you think you can contribute?
Well, as a farmer, I think the best way to contribute is to tell our story. Again, these are the things that we're doing on our farm. This is what works. This is why we do it. The benefits that we see, and farmers are great experimenters, so to speak. So we learn from our fellow farmers. If something works in one area, again, we'll give it a try on a smaller scale and see how it works. If it works, we'll adopt that practice. If it doesn't, then we'll try something else. So I think, again, as a farmer, I think the most important thing I can do is tell our story.
But what kind of ideas you think you could introduce to collaborate?
Well, I think, again, as I have traveled the world and seen what some other farmers in other countries are doing, uh, if we if we could just uh, enable them to have access to some of the technology that some of the rest of us are fortunate enough to have, and specifically in the seed world. Again, these seeds that contain some of these biotechnology traits are size neutral. So imagine, a smaller farmer. Uh, if he had access to some of this technology that's in some of these seeds, I think their life would be so much easier. On my farm, I have the implements that my grandfather farmed with. My grandfather farmed with horses and mules and hand equipment, and as I look at that equipment and think about how they farmed in this area during his time. Again, if he'd had access to some of this innovation and technology, his life would have been so much easier, easier. You know, he was continually fighting insects and weeds, and there's an answer to that, and that can have an immediate, direct impact on a lot of lives.
So how do you think this can change the agribusiness of the future? What could we achieve in your property and all the properties around the world with access to technology, innovation, and your part in this?
Well, I think, again, if we can educate and talk to some of the decision makers or even the farmers themselves, so they can talk to their decision makers in their respective countries and regions, and uh, I think it can have a huge impact as we try to feed the growing world. And uh, quite honestly, I think it is selfish and irresponsible of some other regions of the world and countries to deny access to other regions that are less fortunate. And in my mind, they're actually holding them back. And I think that's a crime against humanity. We see that in certain areas where, a certain region will have a heavy political influence over another region, and those are the areas, those other where this technology would benefit those people so much, and it just, it's upsetting to see as a farmer.
Well, Chip, unfortunately, our time is up, but I would like to say it was lovely talking to you. Thank you very much, Phillip Chip Councell. Congratulations on your achievement and on the award.
Thank you very much.
E no AgroAmérica de hoje nós falamos de iniciativas inovadoras para a conscientização sobre o setor agrícola e sua relação com a segurança alimentar e a sustentabilidade nos Estados Unidos. Você pode rever este programa e também outras entrevistas no nosso canal no YouTube. Aproveite para seguir a gente nas redes sociais, @AgroMaisTV. E continue com a programação do AgroMais, seu canal voltado para o agronegócio 24 horas. Obrigada pela companhia. A gente se vê.